Welcome back, regular viewer, loyal subscriber. So last time at the end of training we started setting out individual training schedules for all of our players. I've completed that work, at least in the first pass. So here, if you would care to have a glance through, you can see I've set up my keepers as to train as sweeper keepers. My general approach here, given we're a low level team, is to spread our training broadly across all of the players to try and have maximum chance. Well, really I ought to focus the limited amount of training I have on the things that really matter for their position. So this is probably not the route to go if you've set yourself up as a manager and you don't have the staff to have very effective training. Given Hope Powell has skills across the board and our coaching staff are going to be quite good, I've gone for a broad approach to hit as many of the attributes during individual training as possible. So although my team defenders will be training as liberos on support, that is not because they will be actually playing a libero role. That is mainly because it hits more stats than does training as a straightforward central defender. And similarly you'll see people working on box-to-box midfielder, which hits a large number of stats, and complete forward up the front. It's not that they're particularly talented in those areas, but it's hitting a broad set of skills. In addition, I've gone through and focused on individual training for particular members of the team. So where there's a specific deficit for a player, so Jeff Putz here has a single point in strength and jumping reach. So I've put him on strength training with the idea that if we double that to 2 and double that to 2, then that's 100% improvement in those areas. Again, as a member of playing staff, he's probably not going to be on the pitch, and possibly, you know, if he wasn't costing us a huge £0 per week and have a transfer value of nothing, the training here is probably not relevant particularly, but there's no harm, no foul. And where I can, I have set these players to be training in a particular trait. So if we have a look on his training on traits, I have asked my coaches to train Bradley Rolt to shoot with power. He has good finishing stat, but perhaps lacks the composure and technique in order to place his shots carefully. So perhaps better to just employ his good physicality and his ability to use his raw shooting talent to snap those shots in with a high degree of power. So over the next few games, hopefully that will be enhancing. And I've for the younger players, I've set that up. The older players won't adapt to changing their style of play now. So Danny Lewis and James Armson, for example, are in their 30s and they're kind of set the way that they are. So in their case, I have sometimes made the decision to get them to train to work on their other foot, which seemed to be something that you can do anytime. We have noted, of course, that the workload now across the team is considered heavy. I am expecting that to be heavy from a part-timer point of view. We might see an increase in the number of training injuries that we have, and some of the players might complain because it doesn't suit their work ethic. But it's a way of shaking it out early in pre-season, and if we are getting too many injuries, I can of course just reduce the training intensity a step or two, just to temper it a little bit to suit the players in the team. Anyway, today I was just going to step back through here. I'll quickly touch on mentoring. So I've set up a mentoring group here. Mentoring establishes a group of players, usually one senior player with high influence in the team, and we'll show you in dynamics how to work out which players are the influential players in the dressing room, And the way that I would set this up is that I would just select the younger players in the team who can learn from that older player, and this is a way of influencing their hidden attributes. So the effect of learning from this influential player is here. The younger players will gain significantly from being in groups with an older mentor. They'll reach an age where they'll no longer gain as much having a mentor. If they're in the same social group, they will gain more as well. So Luis Lomas, for example, is a defender. He has not properly gelled with any of the social groups within the team because he's a new player. He's only just been transferred in. And so at the moment, he's only getting average benefit from the group. But you know, later when he finds his place in a social group and bonds with them comfortably, then he might increase that to a significant impact. And we have in charge of this group Danny Lewis, as we noted, our first goalkeeper. He has one of the personalities that we really want to rub off on our younger players. So in this case, you'd be looking for model citizen, model professional, or just professional, which gives you an indication that he has a very high rating in the hidden attributes that are beneficial to playing in a football club, being a member of a dressing room. So I would hope that over a period of time, the model citizen personality might be seen in this group of younger players over a period of time, and they will move from balanced to a more positive personality type, and hence we will improve the dressing room. You can assign multiple groups. You can each with a different influential player if you wanted to spread personality traits across particular groups within the dressing room, or you can just ask your assistant to assign based on his best idea of what's going on, and as your squad size increases, you will undoubtedly want to come back in here every couple of months, every quarter, and just make sure any new signings or any loanees, people who've come in on loan, are just dropped into one of the appropriate mentoring groups, just to help the younger players learn from the more experienced players and gain some of those benefits. I wanted to drop back into tactics and just drop into the match plan engine. Now this is not commonly used, as I think I've previously mentioned in the videos. There is an achievement for using this feature at least once in a game, and at present about 0.5% of people who own the game on Steam have achieved that achievement, which makes me think it's not used very much. But as we mentioned previously, it's a way of automating certain touchline instructions and your team mentality and tactics during a game via the assistant manager. So this is a way of improving the reaction. So rather than having to pause the game, change the instruction, and then unpause the game, it will automatically do it. Which means if the game is zipping past because you've set the game on high speed during the and you're just looking at the key highlights, you can miss shifts in the game, which mean that you can be a bit late on giving the team new instructions. So this is to create a new, so let's just do Brackley General Match Plan. So this is it, and a match plan consists of a number of scenarios, and each scenario is effectively a score line combined with a time in the match. So let's start by saying, right, if we are at the beginning of, by default we're following our pattern, so Brackley will start the game using the 4-2-4 tiki-taka style on a positive mentality. So we might want to say, well, what happens if we go down by a goal during the first 25 minutes. So we've come out to play our game in a positive mentality, and immediately we've conceded. What's the kind of thing that we want to do? Well, here you can change your tactic, and you have the 3 prepared tactics which your team are being trained on, or you can just pick a formation or anything that you've previously used. But let's just stay with the current tactic. And our mentality, we might want to say, instead of positive, let's go back to balanced, and we're going to add an instruction to be more disciplined. Done. So if we concede in the first 25 minutes, or if we are losing in the first 25 minutes, just play with more discipline for the first 25 minutes. And then at the end of that period, we would revert to our normal tactic if we don't specify anything else. But let's add another scenario. Say we are winning by 2 goals at any time during the match. What we might want to do is to conserve our energy. So rather than playing in a positive form, we might want to play more balanced, and we might want to start wasting time a little bit. So we can go a lower tempo or a much lower tempo. So let's go to a lower tempo. We will, it gets quite annoying. We will waste some time, and we might want to, instead of pressing, we might want to focus on stepping back from the opponent. Goalkeeper slows the pace down, and we change our line of engagement. We turn off the any tackling. We stay on our feet. We don't tackle as hard. So that will, once we're 2 goals up at any time, give us a much more laid-back, casual approach, and conserve some energy. So you can see how this goes, and you can get quite complicated in here. So let's add another scenario. If at the end of the match, let's say we are losing by a goal or more in the last 20 minutes, let's switch up to an attacking mentality, and let's increase the well, tell the goalie to take long kicks. We will play much higher tempo, perhaps. Much higher tempo, and we will get stuck in. Whoops. And we will we done tempo? Yeah, much higher tempo. Be more expressive? Maybe. We don't want to waste any time, but that's our general policy anyway. And in order to generate more turnovers, perhaps we will use the offside trap. So we can tinker with these anytime we like. Now we have the option, when we have one of these and we have it highlighted, we have the option to use this during a match or not. And I'll click on that there. This now becomes the next match is selected here. We can set up a different plan for home and away tactics if we want, or have a whole slew of them for different scenarios. But this, you can just have one and swap it in. The main problem with this is that if you start tinkering with your tactics during the match engine, it tends to cancel the match plan by default. The second problem, apart from the clunkiness of this particular programming language, is that it will automatically do team substitutions for you unless you tell it not to. It's not something I've found in this programming tool to tell it not to do that by default, but I'll show you that when it comes to the match engine. So I want you to take a bit of care there. Now in the match engine you will find it, and I'll show you this when we start the match, underneath the current tactic that's being used there's a little drop down menu, and in that menu it will tell you whether you're using your match plan or not, which match plan you're using, whether it's allowed to do substitutions or not, and it allows you to change any of those criteria around. But because it's a drop down menu, you won't see it on the interface straight away, so you have to know it's there. But that's something to have a look at in the match engine, and probably the vast majority of Football Manager users haven't really seen this feature. So I might do a more extensive video next time looking at different kinds of match plans and how you can put together these scenarios carefully and comprehensively, because this list could get very long. In addition, because there's a lot of flexibility in here, changing your tactics with touchline instructions, you could very easily put a set of instructions in that is going to contradict how your tactic works, and your team is going to fall apart, or at least be considerably less familiar with what you're asking them to do. So it's better if you make fewer tweaks using this and stick to developing new tactics, rather than putting a load of different instructions here and shouting them all at the touchline, from the touchline to change play, in an effort to get the most out of the fact it can automatically swap these tactics in at certain times during the match. Anyway, I thought it'd be interesting to just take you through that and show you what was what. And in the last bit on this video, before we move time on, I wanted to go through player acquisition. So when we go to the scouting screen at the beginning, you may be given a list of scout recommendations based on people they know. In this case, my current staff only know of one player, Toby Stevens from Yeovil, and even though they know of Toby Stevens from Yeovil, many of his stats, because I have attribute masking on, are hidden from us. So we can see he's no good in attack. In terms of his finishing and lock shots, they're likely to be quite poor, but as a defensive midfielder he rates 4.5 stars, at least based on current awareness, broadly because he is incredibly quick, and his tackling capability as part of his defensive package is very good. It seems he works hard and he's a good team player, but some of these other stats might indicate that he's got some significant weaknesses across his game that we might need to be more careful about. So in order to expose more of these hidden scores, before we punt in and try and either buy him or loan him from Yeovil, we can ask our scouts to spend some time having a look at him. You do get a scout summary in this. This is where your scout currently is. The gold stars indicate a high degree of confidence from your scouts that that potential is true, or that ability is true. The silver stars are kind of an assessment of the stats that we can't see at the moment because of lack of scouting and also lack of watching the player play time. This is a sort of, we're not confident that he has an additional 1.5 stars in ability, but it's possible. Similarly with potential, as a player he's definitely got a 3-star potential. Might actually be considerably more than that, but we won't know until not only have we looked at the player, we've spent a fair amount of time with the player. important here is to see whether the player would be interested in joining a team like Brackley. We see, yeah, there is some interest in transfer, but it's unclear whether Yeovil would let him go. And even if he did, we've got zero transfer budget anyway, so we couldn't afford him. However, the player is very interested in a loan. This doesn't tell you whether the team itself will loan him out, so that's one thing that could stop a loan. The other thing that can stop a loan is whether the player wants to go on loan. So there's no point in Brackley going to a Premier League club and asking to loan one of their star youngsters, because the Premier League club will want them to be playing at a much higher level of football, and be surrounded by a much higher calibre of not only teammates but also opposition to aid in their development. So that's to assess sort of a player. If we go down to scouting, we can give our scouts a general assignment. So just having a look at staff assignments, the one that we have set up automatically is that we scout our next opposition, which is an ongoing assignment. In order to conduct any other assignments, we're going to have to A, hire more scouts, B, set up the assignment, and C, allocate it to the scouts in a particularly good way. We can look for players on a player search, doing it ourselves. We see that our ability to look at player stats is limited by our scouting range, also limited by the recruitment package that we see. You can buy into a recruitment package any time. You can also buy out of a recruitment package at any time. And what you'll see is that without a recruitment package, we get considerably fewer players, and we see considerably less of that individual players. So we could go in and say, oh, this chap looks interesting, Sezgin Alexeyev. But what do you know about him? His reputation is that he can pass a ball really well. We don't know anything else. You can't really improve a team based on this level of visibility. So having a package available to you in terms of the in terms of the player scouts, having a recruitment package switched on costs money, but gives you more players to choose from and a better view of their initial stats. You can turn it off at any time, which means that the amount you're paying is reduced. The interesting thing about that is you can, from your scouting budget, buy as high a package as you can, but don't advance time. Do all of your decision making with the package on so that you can see more of the players and you can get a view of more of their stats. Then cancel the package before you advance time, and in that way you don't spend the money on the package. Otherwise the cost of these packages gets, for a club of Brackley's size, trying to pay £30,000 a month to get a database that covers all of the UK and Ireland is ridiculous, and would instantly or very soon bankrupt the club. So it might be okay to spend nearly £3,000 a month on Vanarama North South, but given £3,000 a month corresponds to at least one extra player at £750 a week, a star player for the club. If there's a choice between paying this money and keeping it, I'm voting to keep that money and dip into packages when we need to, and only when we need to. Your recruitment analysts continually assess the pool of people that you have covered in here. So clearly, if you are playing as a Premier League team or a higher tier team that has a huge amount of revenue coming in and out, paying 60 grand a month for the best package available means your recruitment analysts ongoing basis can be selecting recommendations from that. As a smaller club, we just have to remind ourselves every month to keep popping back into the recruitment screen, and then during one really intense morning, doing all of our recruitment planning, getting people in from for loan, and then cancelling the package and going back to not having visibility. So we're not really going to be relying in on recruitment analysts because, well, A, we probably won't have one, and B, it will cost not only the cost of hiring a recruitment analyst, but also the cost of the package on top of that to properly fuel them so that they're selecting the right kind of candidates for you. So that being said, let's just do some initial work in here. Let's get the best package we can afford. Now I realise that we can take some of our free wage budget, punt that into scouting budget, and actually get a boost to Europe and the world. But given Brackley is a tiny tier 6 club in Britain, our chances of attracting significant talent from around the world at this stage in the game probably very low. So we'll just keep it a UK and Ireland for the moment. That increases the number of players we've got to think about to over 3,000, and that's with the filter setup that they are either on an expired contract or not attached to a particular club. They don't require a work permit, or that their work permit chance is very likely. So this is the total pool of candidates available to us, nearly 4,000 players. But we need to use these filters here to isolate players that will realistically be interested in transfers or realistically interested in loans. We'll click on transfers at the moment. We know full well that our transfer limit is £0, so we'll broadly be looking for people who are out of contract in here, and what we need to do for those who are out of contract or where their contract is expiring is select a group of players out of these 3,000 players that we want to have a look at. And the way that we have a look at them is to invite them in for trial. So probably several ways of filtering this list down to try and pick out candidate players. We could sort by stats that we know something about. So say we want to look at hard working players initially. We sort by work rate, and we can pick any of a number of these players to begin with and have a look at them. Or you can just take the block of the top 10 hardest working players that we know about and invite them all in for trial and see how many of them turn up and what we can learn about them. If it's highlighted in yellow here, it's a particular strength of these players. So having somebody in the middle that we consider to be a ball-winning midfielder with very high stamina, jumping reach, acceleration, aggression and determination, as well as a high work rate, that might suit us very well. Only 19 years of age, could be worth a punt. So what we'll do is, just based around sorting on work rate, we'll count down the top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Shift and highlight, and then we will right click. We will go to transfer and we will offer them a trial. We can offer a trial for 1, 2, 3 or 4 weeks. Initially what we're going to do is just do sort of a 2-week trial. We'll probably sort through them as they join the club, do a quick assessment on them. If they look really appalling, we'll let them go straight away. If they look even semi-decent, we'll keep them on for the full 2 weeks and have a look at their stats as they become revealed to us through our increasing knowledge of the player. We can do that on more than just one of these stats. I find the mental stats are reasonable to start with. I like work rate because it indicates a player who's willing to put in the shift, not only on the pitch but also in training. Don't like lazy players. It might be something that that's my management style. And the way that I would work. We've been told that we lack leadership as a team, so it could be that we want to have a look at players that have significant leadership advantage. So looking at people like Cameron Healy, 22 years old, we know his leadership is very good. Don't know very much else about him in terms of stats, but that's why you invite them into trial. So let's take the top 10 leadership team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. and we'll transfer, offer trial, 2 weeks, send. And determination is another one that I often like to sort on, but having high determination seems to be quite common, and it's one of those stats that it's indeterminate what it does for the player. This guy looks quite interesting. Got lots of yellows in his mental stats. Clearly a very bright player. He's a central defender. He's quite tall, but his jumping reach looks like it's going to be a bit poor. But he's young. Good positioning. His tackling might not be too bad, along with the marking. Poor anticipation, and concentration, which might limit him in central defence. But anyway, just diverting myself. You can spend hours upon hours, working through these 3,000 odd players and figuring out who might be good for you. I like fast players. And players with decent acceleration and speed is certainly something to be considering. So let's take the top 10 speed merchants in the group. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Bring them in for a trial. 2 weeks. Now the impact of having them in a trial and not paying them any money, but they are taking up resources within the club. So my coaches can only effectively cover so many people. When they're in on loan, when they're in on a trial, they clutter up your squad list. They interfere with your training, and they can unsettle the dressing room if you get some weird personality types in here. So it's best to make quick decisions when they're coming in, and kick them out if they're causing you any great degree of trouble. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Right, and we might want to have a look at some very strong players as well. Strength is one of those stats in the lower leagues that can hide deficits in other areas of your play. So you can take a very non-technical player who's not got very good ball control, but because he's very, very strong, the opposition can't get the ball off him, and that is a very handy thing for a lower league management coach, is that you can succeed very well just getting the biggest, strongest lads you can find and then bullying other teams off the pitch. Now Brackley clearly is not a team with that as a team ethic. Our current team is lighter and less brave than the average in the division, so we might want to reverse that trend just by having a look at some strong players and seeing how they match up. What else might we want to sort by? We need a bit more depth in our goalkeeping, but we really don't know very much about goalkeepers. But looking at handling skill is possibly one way of just sorting throughs and 1v1s. Let's have a look at 1v1s because we were particularly problematic in those. I don't know. Let's start with people who might be able to handle the ball quite well, and then we'll work from there. Transfer, offer trial. We'll drop that to 2 weeks and go. Right, now we've done all that, let's cancel the package. When we advance time, the invites will go out. We will receive replies, and then when we accept all of those replies as people joining the club, our coaches will have a once-over of the players coming in, and we'll give you a quick star rating, again looking at the gold stars and silver stars, to give you an idea of their current ability and potential. As a lower league team with relatively poor training facilities potential is of less interest to us perhaps than current ability. We want players we can bring in quickly, maybe for a season or two, to get us out of the Vanarama North South and into the Vanarama National, and then maybe onward and upward into Skybet 2. In the meantime, we need more scouts, we need better scouts, in order to give us a chance at identifying those one or two key players, star players, that we can bring in on a more permanent basis, and also the lone players that we can bring in to enhance the squad in significant areas. But that will take a little bit extra time and a little bit extra scouting capability within the team. At the moment, we'll stick with trials, bring some people in, have a look at them, and once we start building up a short list of candidate players, we can either keep trialling them, those that we like the look of, to build up our knowledge of them, or we can make offers to them, bring them onto the team, and be happy with that. Anyway, we're getting closer and closer to an actual match, but I thought it would be worth going through lower league recruitment strategy at the moment, and the use of trials, and we'll see how that pans out over the next few weeks. But that's it for the moment, and I hope you catch me next time. Take care. Goodbye.
I fought with lions and wolves, but I've never fought myself before. It's so